Good afternoon, everybody. Can you all hear me? My name is Hussein Mahadi, and I'm the moderator for today's program on Jiipcc Mentorship and Internship Program. Today is the 7th week of the program, and today I think we are going to be having a combined class. Please, can you all hear me? Somebody should just indicate that you can hear me, so I will
Yes,
carry on. Okay, thank you
Yes,
very
sir, we
much.
can hear you. Good evening.
We all know today our topic for today is data protection, data privacy protection, blockchain, NFTs, and the metaverse. And today we are having 4 mentors for the program. We welcome all our mentees. I hope we are all having a creative day, a productive day so far. So welcome. You can see that one of our mentors with us, Ms. Sarah Zade. Welcome her to the program. So as our mentees are joining the program and the rest of our mentors, I'll quickly let us know what the program is all about. So Jiipcc Mentorship and Internship Program is a quarterly program for students and young professionals across Africa. Mentees are afforded the opportunity to access valuable advice, training, network, mentorship, internship, discussion forums, industry updates, resource materials from experienced mentors, and the program seeks to encourage continuous learning, development, and evolution in Nigeria and Africa. You can watch our videos by searching for Jiipcc on YouTube, on Facebook, and on LinkedIn, #JiipcCMIP. So some of the objectives of the programs are to provide easy access to guidance, training, resource materials for students and young professionals in Africa, to facilitate dialogue, network among experienced and less experienced practitioners and stakeholders, and to transform mentees into mentors for the next generation, and finally to facilitate further mentorship, internship, scholarship, and job placement for the mentees. So this is what the program is all about. I'll be skipping the announcements, some of the announcements for now, so I'll just jump into the mentors profile for today. Our first mentor is Sarah Zade. So Sarah Zade is an attorney at Nauta Dudley in the technology group and the Benelux data protection team, and specializes in IT, privacy, and data protection law. Sarah advises and assists national and international clients on privacy governance, IT agreements and disputes, cybersecurity, privacy, supervision and regulation in the healthcare sector, and legal aspects of emerging technology, such as blockchain, artificial intelligence, the metaverse. Sarah is frequently invited as a guest speaker at seminars and conferences, including the Next Web International Tech Conference, Nine Road Business University, and Dutch National News Radio, NPO Radio 1. She also regulates published articles and blogs. Sarah studied at Leiden University, Philosophy of Law, the University of Amsterdam. She studied health law, and the London School of Economics and Political Science, where she studied cyber law. In 2023, she completed the Oxford Artificial Intelligence Program at the University of Oxford. Thank you for joining us today, Sarah Zade. We are very happy to have you with us, and we look forward to learning from you today. So I'll be reading the profile for our next mentor for today, Mr. George Onyewuchi. He's our profound mentor, and we have been having him for several sessions, and we are also very happy to have him today on this session on this wonderful topic: data protection, privacy, blockchain, NFT, and metaverse. So Mr. George currently heads fintech engagements for First Bank and its subsidiaries across Africa at its Digital Innovation Lab, setting up and driving the bank's fintech strategy. George is a link that connects technology, business, and ecosystem partnership He is at the intersection of product, partnership, and ecosystem building. He has led the tech solution product development for the SMEs banking business of a leading commercial bank, and has taken numerous financial and non-financial products from idea to market and growth. He has led digital transformation in the client engagement processes for leading commercial banks, including one of the Nigerian banking industry, first end-to-end account opening for corporate accounts and SME digital lending. His team has won numerous awards for powering growth of SMEs. He also provides advisory for Crypt.Africa towards developing blockchain infrastructure and building an open system for African businesses on the blockchain, and hosts knowledge session on blockchain application to various industries within the African context. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mr. George Onyewuchi. I'll be reading our third mentor's profile. As we all know, we have 4 mentors today. So I'll be reading the third mentor's profile, which is Mr. Matthew Saisi. Mr. Matthew Saisi is a Kenyan qualified lawyer with an LLM in computer and communications law. He currently specializes in data protection and cybercrime and services as a certified information privacy practitioner. He has worked with various organizations, including Microsoft and OneTrust, and presently acts as Global Privacy and Data Protection Counsel for DHL Supply Chain. He also has a passion for mentorship and youth engagement. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mr. Matthew. We look forward to learning from you on our topic for today. And finally, I'll be calling on our last mentor for today, Mr. David Asomoye. David Asomoye is an engineer with blockchain publishing. He is a software engineer with a strong interest in blockchain and the virtual reality space. He's passionate about startups and open source projects. David has experience in building production-ready user interface, RESTful APIs, several blockchain technologies. He is a language framework agnostic software engineer with a core interest in blockchain, open source, and the metaverse. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mr. David. So quickly, I'll be moving on to the presentations from our mentees. So we have 4 groups that will be presenting: the Health Tech and Law Group 2, the AI Group 2, the Intellectual Property Group 2, and the FinTech Group 3. So I'll be taking your presentations. Afterwards, we'll be having the comments from our prestigious mentors. So I'll call on Health Tech and Law Group 2 to start their presentation. You can share your screen and unmute yourself so that we can hear you while you are presenting. So please, presenter for Group 2, Health Tech and Law, kindly start your presentation, and note that you have 8 minutes to present, as we don't have much time for the presenters today. Kindly start your presentation now. Thank you very much. Presenter for Group 2, Health Tech and Law, please, I'm waiting for you. Okay, if the presenter is not ready, I think the backup presenter can step in for Health Tech and Law. The presenter for Group 2, I think, is Tim Nam Satan, and the backup presenter is Nanchang Nanwang. Please, if you are with us in the meeting, you can start your presentation. Okay, let's move to AI Group 2, and maybe we'll come back to Health Tech and Law Group 2. So AI Group 2, presenter for Group 2, AI, Artificial Intelligence Group. Please, you can start your presentation immediately. Do you have our presenter? Good
afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to share my screen now. I think I'm having issues with my camera, so I can't exactly turn it on, but I'll share my screen now and begin presenting, so that's fine.
Okay, kindly note that you have 8 minutes to present. Please take note of the time.
All right, so can you see my screen?
No, not yet.
No, not yet.
No, we can't.
Okay.
Not yet.
Um. Okay. I'm just trying to figure it out. I don't know if. Uh, can you see my screen now, please?
No, we can't see your screen. Please, you can start your presentation while you are trying to share your screen.
All right. Okay, so for AI Group 2, for this week, our topic was on the metaverse. And from our research, Mark Zuckerberg defined the metaverse as an embodied internet that you're inside of instead of just looking at. So the metaverse is a virtual reality that allows people from all over the world to interact. They can interact with each other and they can interact with the metaverse itself. And in the metaverse, the users are allowed to obtain items that remain there between sessions or even land that's all within the metaverse. And the major difference between the metaverse and the internet that we use now is that the metaverse is a combination of virtual and augmented reality. Virtual reality allows users to experience the world around them in the metaverse, and augmented reality allows users to not only experience the world within the metaverse, but also interact with that world. The crux of the metaverse is human interaction. So for video games that have been developed over the years, things like video games like World of Warcraft and Minecraft that use metaverses, they use worlds that are like metaverses that allows users to interact with other users and also build worlds with them. Minecraft, for example, has a building that is very alike to the Library of Alexandria, and it has books and documents that have been banned in several countries, but users can log into Minecraft and access those books. And now the budding metaverse allows for much more than that. Developing metaverses such as Decentraland and the Sandbox, they allow users to buy land and spend cryptocurrency in those metaverses. So essentially, the metaverse operates on Web3. Web3 was defined by Ethereum founder Gavin Woods as a new and better internet where one could read, write, own. The current internet model that we have, which is Web2, it requires trust with information and third-party internet service providers. What Web3 does is that it eliminates the middlemen. That means it eliminates the role of ISPs, and it builds a decentralized system that uses cryptocurrencies, blockchains, and NFTs to allow users to own their digital assets instead of owning assets through ISPs, and they can easily be taken away or deleted from the internet. Property owned in the metaverse cannot be deleted or erased. And this is because ownership of property in the metaverse has the same effect as ownership in the physical world. While a person that has purchased property in the metaverse, they may not have a physical hold on that property. In the metaverse, they have ownership of that property, and the property was bought with money, and they can also charge rent space, such as with what's done in the Sandbox. Companies that have used the metaverse include Gucci. Gucci created the Gucci Garden, which was a pop-up on Roblox, and it sold designs. It sold a single bag for over $4,000 in real world money. Dolce and Gabbana D&G also sold a 9-piece collection Zoni on the electric marketplace UNXD for $5.7 million. And the different thing about this collection is that the collection is only used by avatars in the metaverse. So a person who has purchased from D&G in this space they can't exactly own it in physical terms. They won't exactly have a jacket or a handbag, but their avatars have such things. And then artists like Travis Scott, they've hosted virtual only concerts and listening parties on Fortnite. And these listening parties and concerts, they require tickets, they require the whole shebang of going of registering for an actual concert, but they're virtual only, and they encapsulate the whole experience as if it was a physical concert. So cases arising from the use of the metaverse, we're going to look at three cases. The first case, which is probably the most popular one, Hermes versus Mason Rothschild. And this is popularly known as the Meta Birkins case. So the Meta Birkins case, the summary of it is that the defendant, he designed and started to sell digital products that looks like Birkin bags, but they are not physical Birkin bags. So in the metaverse, these are their products, their NFTs basically, that's Birkins, but they have the image, they have the structure of a Birkin, but they do not have the Hermes logo, and they are known for being fuzzy and covered with something that looks like fur. And Hermes, the plaintiff, has claimed that their goodwill is being used to market products and that trademark infringement has occurred. But however, these are digital products and they do not bear the trademark of the company. Neither can the company claim for something such as industrial design because, again, they're not physical products. And this case is really yet to be concluded, and it's something that, as a group, we're really trying to watch and look forward to the conclusion. So we just have an image of digital Meta Birkins here just to show everyone what they look like. So they actually do look like a Birkin, but they're not a physical product. The next case, Nike versus StockX LLC. So StockX is an online sneaker resale platform that allegedly started to sell NFTs that had the appearance of digital images and physical versions of Nike sneakers. So Nike sued based on trademark infringements, and StockX in reply stated that its products were not solely virtual products. Again, this matter is still pending before the court. So the StockX website and just what it looks like and why Nike had an issue with StockX's sale of such things. And the third case, the final case we looked at, was the Dapper Labs case. Dapper Labs is the company that created CryptoKitties, created Flow, and created NBA Top Shots. So this case really surrounds NBA Top Shots. Its CEO a group of plaintiffs sued Dapper Labs and alleged that the NFTs that were sold by Dapper Labs on its platform constituted unregistered securities in violation of federal securities laws. When I say federal, I mean federal for the United States of America. So the plaintiff stated that Dapper Labs had prevented investors in NBA Top Shots from cashing out. So basically, NBA Top Shots is the investors can buy moments. So these moments are maybe when a slam dunk was made, or just things that are really important in NBA that people like to remember. So maybe they're like 5 to 10 second clips that people buy and people own as NFTs. So the issue here was that it appears that Dapper Labs prevented the investors from selling their Top Shot moments. And the plaintiffs were upset about it because what's the purpose in investing in something if you cannot sell it to make more profits? And again, this matter is still pending before the court and there is no conclusion. And in our next slide, we just put an image of Dapper Labs and just what they have created. And then in the corner of the image, you can see what an NBA Top Shot moment looks like. So in conclusion, we believe that the metaverse is a seminal development in the 21st century, and it's really something that, among other things, that has set our century and our time apart from the other centuries, and is gradually becoming pivotal for trade and commerce, just as the internet was. However, it creates new challenges for the law, particularly for the protection of IPRs. So our suggestion is that the continued use and development of the metaverse, it requires a corresponding development in law in order to cater for specific challenges that life in the metaverse presents. So that's it from us. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Grace, for presenting on behalf of AI Group 2. We hope everybody take note, and our mentors too. We'll come back to our mentors' comment on that presentation later on. So we'll be calling on IP Group 2, Intellectual Property Group, the Group 2 for IP. Please, your presenter can unmute yourself and start your presentation immediately. Kindly note that you have 8 minutes to present. IP Group 2, please. I'm waiting for you.
Okay. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
My name is Alukwano. I'll be presenting on behalf of Group 2, Intellectual Property Group 2. Our topic, please, a minute so that I can share my screen.
Okay.
Can we all see my screen?
Yes, you can see your screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
So our topic is NFT. What is NFT? And then NFT is the abbreviated version of non-fungible token. NFT are unique and non-interchangeable units of data that are stored or accounted for on a digital ledger, and such data represents something specific. NFT can represent easily reproducible items such as piece of art, music, video, audio, photos, and other digital files. The application of NFT technology to buying and selling is just an area which is predominantly explored in Nigeria. However, in some jurisdictions, NFT technology is already being used to create crypto tickets, stamps, and the like. Uses of NFT. NFT have been used to exchange digital tokens that link to a digital file asset. Number two, digital art. NFT can be used for high-profile auctions of NFT linked to digital art. A popular example is the example of a photographer that took the picture of a man with drum and then sold it off on the internet on NFT as NFT, sold it on the internet as NFT. And so this is just to buttress the fact that it can be used for digital art. Also, NFT can represent in-game assets such as digital plots of land. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, so a person who puts up an NFT for sale or a buyer, even up to the proprietor of the platform where the NFT is sold, must ensure that he or she is not in breach of the laws governing intellectual property protection in Nigeria. Under Section 15, subsection 1, paragraph 1D of the Copyright Act. A person is liable for copyright infringement where he or she, without the license or authorization of the owner of the copyright, distributes by way of trade, offers for sale, hire, or otherwise, or for any purpose prejudicial to the owner of the copyright. Any article in respect of which copyright is infringed. It therefore means that the sale of an NFT must be such that the NFT being sold is not one which the seller does not have intellectual property rights over, or has infringed on the intellectual property rights of another person or entity. You can also check Section 25 of the Cybercrime Prohibition Prevention Act 2015. The fact that an NFT is created to represent an underlying work of art or creation does not mean that the creator or later owner of the NFT will own the IP, will own the intellectual property rights. Therefore, an NFT owner must be aware that he or she would need to expressly acquire either an assignment or license of the underlying right from the original author of the work or art, or subsequent owners of the artwork. The purchaser of NFT only receives the token and the right to utilize the copyrighted art. NFT may also be subject to regulation by the Securities and Exchange Commission in Nigeria, SEC. Under certain circumstances, in Nigeria, NFTs are digital assets that are deemed regulated by SEC, where they fall within the line of virtual, crypto, or digital assets. And these are regulated, and crypto or digital assets that are regulatable by SEC. NFTs are also subject to CBN regulations. The CBN, the Central Bank of Nigeria, in its circular dated 12 January 2017, stated that virtual currencies are not legal tenders in Nigeria. This circular apply to NFT because they are traded and transacted with the use of digital currencies. And as I stated earlier on, the application of NFT technology to buying and selling is just an area which has been which is yet to be explored in Nigeria. And but for some other jurisdictions, it is something that is easy. They all is used to create crypto tickets, stamps, and the like. We have a case here, Rockefeller Records International and Diamond Dash. A settlement has been reached between Rockefeller Records International, having all rights to the album Reasonable Doubt, including the copyright, according to the parties' clarification. And that brings me to the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much. Ebere Chukwu, for the presentation on behalf of your group IP. We'll be moving on to the next group, which is FinTech Group, the FinTech Group 3. So the presenter for Group 3 FinTech, you can unmute yourself and share your screen with us and start your presentation as you have 8 minutes to present. Thank you very much. Presenter for Group 3 IP, please. FinTech, please. The presenter for Group 3 is Brittany, and the backup presenter is Ehubare Alex. Please, if you are with us, you can unmute yourself immediately.
Okay. Good evening. I please confirm if you can hear me.
Your voice is low. Please be audible.
Okay, good evening. Please confirm if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
And then my screen is properly shared.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, fine. Thank you so much. So, good evening, everyone, the organizers, and also to our mentors here present. My name is Alex Ezubare. Unfortunately, our presenter is not present in the meeting, and so I would have to make up for her. So, basically, our topic for this week is blockchain. Obviously, first of all, I will have to tell what blockchain really is. So the first slide gives us a proper definition of what blockchain is. Of course, blockchain is a shared immutable ledger that facilitates the process of recording transactions and tracking assets in a business network. So blockchain is, in simple terms, of course, is a system of recording information in a way that makes it difficult or impossible to change, hack, or fix the system. Very good examples of blockchain and popular ones are Bitcoin and Ethereum. So an asset can be tangible, right? It could be a house, a car, of course, or even intangible like intellectual property, patents, copyright, branding. And it's also important to note that virtually anything of value can be tracked and traded on a blockchain network. So next slide talks about the history of blockchain. So for the history of blockchain, obviously in 1982, Jiipcc proposed the first ever blockchain-like protocol in computation. Computer systems established, maintained, and trusted by mutually suspicious groups. This concept was further worked on by Stuart Haber and W. Scott Sonetta in 1991, where they described the process of a cryptographically secured chain of blocks with timestamps that could not be tampered with. So, however, blockchain was first popularized by Satoshi Nakamoto in 2018. He improved the design using the hashcat-like method to timestamp each block without the need for a central authority or trusted password. So next, we'll talk about the blockchain structure, right? So a blockchain collects information, of course, like I have previously said, together in a group known as blocks that hold sets of information. Now, one thing that happens is when you collect information, a point that comes after it. So as each transaction occurs, or as each transaction occurs, it is recorded as a block of data. That's the very first thing. Then the next thing is that each block is connected to the ones before and after it, right? And then the third explains that transactions are blocked together in an irreversible chain, and that is what is known as blockchain. So the previous one, the current one, and then the next one, they are all connected together, which makes it in a block, right? Which makes it a blockchain. So that's basically the structure of a blockchain. So there are key elements of the blockchain that are necessary ledger technology. So after ledger and immutable record of transactions. With this shared ledger, transactions are recorded only once, eliminating the duplication of efforts that typically of traditional business networks. Secondly, an immutable record is also a key element of blockchain. So no participant can change or tamper with the transaction after it's been recorded to the shared ledger. Of course, if there is any alteration, notifications will be sent out, and then it alters the whole processes and the whole chain, yes, all together. If a transaction record includes an error, a new transaction must be added to reverse the error, and both transactions are then visible. The next is smart contracts. So to speed transactions, the set of rules called smart contracts is stored on the blockchain. Of course, you cannot talk about blockchain without talking about smart contracts, It's stored on the blockchain and executed automatically. The smart contract can define conditions for corporate and bond transfers, include terms of travel insurance, to be paid, and much more. So next, we're going to talk about the types of blockchains. Of course, there are several types of blockchains that are available, and in the course of the presentation, I'll be presenting, or I'll be taking some of the examples, each of them for easy comprehension. So the very first one, which is most popular, right, is the public blockchain. Of course, the public blockchain, these are also known as permissionless or trustless blockchain because they are not restricted and they are available to everyone to participate in the blockchain process that is used to validate transactions and data. It's very okay. Yes, one thing about this public blockchain is that there is so much of transparency. It is used in the network where high transparency is required. A very key example of the public blockchain is Bitcoin. Yes, so there is no single authority that can alone control how the state of blockchain evolves with the use of a public blockchain. So there are basically no restrictions on new participants, like I have previously mentioned. So the next is the private or permission blockchain. So these are the closed networks where only a set of groups are allowed to validate transactions or data in a given blockchain network. So from the explanation, you get to realize that the private blockchain is more like the opposite of public blockchain. The public blockchain gives you no restrictions, but in private blockchains there are restrictions, right? Or it only allows only a set of groups are allowed to validate transactions or data in a given blockchain network. People who want to join require permission from the system administrator. So it's really, really restricted, and that's why it's known as a private blockchain. Examples of companies that use the private blockchain are I think the IBM Hyperledger is a private blockchain, the R3 Corda is a private blockchain, and then the Texas also provides private blockchain services. So the next is the hybrid blockchain. So the hybrid blockchain is often referred to as a combination of both public chain and the private chain. So if you get it very well, you understand what I'm trying to say. So for the hybrid, there is an element of the public blockchain and then also an element of the private blockchain. Of course, this is where some parts is controlled by some organizations and others are made visible as a public blockchain. So there are some that are made private and others are also made public. An example of okay, fine. So it blends essential components of both the public blockchain and the private blockchain. I really cannot at this point out an example of a hybrid blockchain, but there have been some controversies as to whether or not the BNB Smart Chain is a hybrid blockchain. So I'll just move on with the next one, which is the consortium blockchain. The consortium blockchain is a combination of multiple private blockchains belonging to different organizations, right? So there is okay, for consortium, we basically are leaning on the private blockchain of the distribution, right? So here it is not just a private blockchain, it is a combination of multiple private blockchains belonging to different organizations. So a very good example, a very, very good example is the IBM hybrid blockchain or the IBM food trust. That's a very good example. So the next and lastly is the sidechain blockchain. So the sidechain blockchain is a separate blockchain network that connects to another blockchain. So called the parent blockchain or mainnet. So a sidechain blockchain, of course, is more like I don't call it a secondary or subsidiary, but the major thing to note about it is connected to another blockchain, right? Which is referred to as the parent blockchain via a two-way peg. Yes, it is via a two-way peg. So a sidechain blockchain can interact with another blockchain. So yes, that I think there are also controversies that the BNB Smart Chain is a sidechain blockchain. Yes, I think for me, I will conclude that the BNB Smart Chain is an example of a sidechain blockchain. So there are obviously some features of a blockchain. This is like my last slide. These are the 4 features of blockchain which we are going to talk about in detail. So we have a public distributed ledger which works using a hashing encryption. Next is we have every block has a hash value. Yes, every block has a hash value, which is a digital signature of the block. Then the next one is all the transactions are approved and verified on blockchain networks using a proof of work consensus algorithm. Then lastly, the blockchain network utilizes the resources of the miners who are there to validate the transactions or for rewards. So in conclusion, I will say this on my own because it's not here. In conclusion, you see that blockchain is one of the most secured, like I have rightly stated, it's one of the most secured system, right? It's a most secured system. Of course, information in the blockchain cannot be easily tampered, and people usually what's it called recommend blockchain for so many activities, and I think even in the forthcoming election that is be conducted in Nigeria in 2023, people say that one way to make sure that voting is efficient and that nobody tampers with the figures is to include the use of blockchain in the voting system. And of course, from a proper peruser, you will understand that that is a very, very valid point because it makes things more secure and not able to be tampered with. So these are the names of the group members. Of course, like I rightly said, my name is Degubari Alex, and I am the group leader for Group 7 and also eventually the presenter for today. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm glad that to have presented before each and every one of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex, for stepping in and presenting on behalf of your group. That shows a very good leadership quality, and thank you for enlightening us on the blockchain aspect of our topic today. So I think we'll be calling on the first group that were not present, so the Health Tech and Law Group 2. You can make your presentation quickly. You have 8 minutes before our mentor starts their comments, and so Health Tech and Law Group 2, any backup presenter, anybody from the group can step in. I think Team Nam is having network issues, so Nanchang, you are the backup presenter. If you are with us, kindly unmute yourself. And if Nanchang is not available, I think Prophet Paul is.
Yeah.
Okay, Nanchang.
Okay. Let me just share the screen. I thought. Okay.
You can start the presentation.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nanchang Nangwang, and I am the backup presenter for Group 2. What we are talking about today is data protection, and I don't know if anyone can see my screen.
Yes, we can see the screen.
We can see. Okay. So we're talking about data protection as it relates to healthcare, and one of the basis for the issue of data protection is as organizations or healthcare organizations collate data from patients or from their customers. It is expected that those data should be secure, and where the data are secure, the customers will be free to actually share their information without any fear of any scandal or anything happening afterward. Now, data protection is regulated, And we have the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation, which was introduced in 2019. It was introduced in 2019, and the the purpose is to safeguard and to regulate and protect against personal data breaches, personal data breaches, and ensure that all Nigerian businesses, including the health sector, remain competitive and secure. So we have some laws that makes provisions for this data, as we have discussed earlier in the previous sessions. There are different ways people access health. And then we have also looked at the issue of technology, the development and advancement in technology that may not involve someone being physically present in a health facility in order to be administered with drugs or to conduct diagnosis or be treated. So with the advent of all this technology, data becomes a very important and a critical issue, matter, because as the doctors or pharmacists are consulting and making prescriptions, they will need to have access to data, to information, to health records, and all of those things. They have to obtain them from the patients. And when these things are done, is a very critical matter, because sometimes you find out that where there are breaches in data, you find out that information that are supposed to be kept confidential and out of reach are now in the public domain. And then the issue of confidentiality and then breach of confidentiality as a matter in the in the healthcare sector becomes a serious issue, that you see people taking up the matters in court, suing for damages and a lot of things like that. So that is why data protection becomes very, very critical. Organizations that provide healthcare must ensure that the data provided or obtained from patients, from customers, are made secure. And this data protection issue has the constitutional backing, like the grand norm. The Constitution of Nigeria makes provision for that. The informations, the Constitution of Nigeria makes provisions for that citizens' privacy, their homes, their correspondences, telephone conversations, and telegraphic communications are guaranteed and protected. So any other law that makes provision for the regulation of data, how it is being obtained, how it is being stored, how it is being transmitted, all of those things, they stem from the provisions of the Constitution, which provides that those data should be secured. And we also have the National Health Act. Under Section 26 sub 1, it makes provision, it provides that all information concerning a user, including information relating to his or her health status, treatment, or stay in health establishment, is confidential. It's confidential because we have a lot of people who come to the hospital, and because of the confidence, they open up to the doctor or the medical personnel. I have this issue, and then most times there are diseases or issues that they don't want it to be on public records. In fact, you have instances or situations where a husband may have an issue, and then he doesn't want his wife or a family member to know about it. And because of the fiduciary relationship between a doctor or a healthcare giver and a patient, you discover that these people come because they are in need. They open up to say what is really the problem so that they can get treated for it. So where there is any fear that trust on the medical practitioner or the healthcare provider is going to be breached, the people who come to the hospital may not be able to open up to say this is really the problem. So that becomes very, very critical. So the National Health Act, which is a national from the National Assembly, also makes provisions for that protection in addition to what the Constitution has provided. Now, what are the advantages of data protection when it comes to protection, when it comes to the healthcare? We've stated that when data are protected in lines with the provisions of the law, it has a way of building this trust between the health provider and the patient. And so the patient can actually open up to what is really the issue or the matter once they are sure that their data are going to be protected. This is important because we have had situations where people who conduct tests in labs, or lab technicians and or microbiologists conduct tests, and then before you know it, you get the information on social media. Oh, so person is HIV positive, so person has so disease. These are confidential matters that should stay confidential. These are health record, health issues that should stay confidential within the confines of the hospital or those who are managing those information. But you see issues like that, and when it comes up, it has a way of tarnishing their reputation and bringing a kind of stigma to the person who is affected. So that is one of the advantages. When data are protected in the healthcare environment, it builds trust between the patient and the doctor or the healthcare provider. And then where there is a breach of confidentiality, or some of this information that ought to be kept confidential comes out to the public, the matters can get escalated to courts, and then the hospitals can be fined. When they are found guilty, they can be fined or cost awarded and all of those things. But in the presence of where data obtained from patients are protected, all those things will be avoided. And then the issue of bad reputation, oh, these people, this hospital used to broadcast, or they are careless about securing the information of their patients. The issue of a lot of people deciding not to patronize the hospital will be avoided. And one advantage also, one other advantage of data protection is that it ensures that where an individual, a doctor, a hospital, or any other person who is involved in the healthcare provision is going to obtain data and he wants to use it for a particular purpose, the consent, the permission of the person he's obtaining that data from will have to be obtained, because since they are actually guaranteed, if there is any need for you to bring it out or use it for any purpose, those information, that has to be done after consent is obtained from the patient. So that's the advantage. Now, the legal implications, as we said, if a hospital or any health organization breaches the data protection law, there are consequences. The consequence I've highlighted briefly is that the court can actually give an order that to mandate a particular hospital to do what is needful. And aside from this order from court mandating someone to do what is needful, where someone successfully established that his confidential information has been and let out there to the public without his consent and permission, and that actually brings some reputational damage to him, and he successfully established that he will claim damages against the hospital or the healthcare provider, and then those damages will be awarded or fines will be meted out. And when that is done, you see that even the hospital, aside from paying the fines, their clients or their patients, some of them will no longer be comfortable going to that hospital. And then the hospital or the healthcare provider can actually be suspended, possibly by the regulatory body that supervises or regulates the activities of that healthcare provider. If it's a doctor, as in personally, maybe the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria, for example, all of those things, the medical practitioner can be suspended pending investigation, or the hospital can actually be suspended or closed pending investigation. And the idea of a medical practitioner or a hospital being sued to court and then going to court and the news going round is actually a bad one for medical practitioners as well as hospitals who provide healthcare services. So these are some of the implications. Once you are asked to come to court and you refuse to come in a civil matter, you eventually judgment will be entered against you. And if judgment is entered against you, it can be executed, and the execution can take any form, including coming to seize some of the properties of the hospital. But if it is a criminal matter and you refuse to come, of course, somebody is going to pay the price by going to.
I think the time is up. Please, just round up.
Yes, I am. That's the last point I am. So those the penalty will be somebody will be cited for contempt of court, and then you may go to prison. Those are some of the legal implications. So in conclusion, the importance of data protection in health sectors can never be overemphasized. It protects the interests and privacy of the patients and equally prevent the doctors from arbitrary use of their rights and power. This will be more visible and complied with following the sanctions stipulated for the violations of data protection laws in Nigeria. Thank you very much. I'm Nancha Nangwang from Group 2. Thank you.
Nacha, and thank you very much to all our presenters, the mentees that presented today. So we'll be moving on to our mentors' comments on the presentation, corrections, and I'll be calling on the first mentor today, Sarah Zade. She'll be the one taking the first comment on the presentations. You can unmute yourself, please.
Yes, hi, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the presentations. I think, would it be an idea if we just start with the first presentation that is about the metaverse, and then I will do my comments, George will do his comments, and then the second one and the third and the last one, because then we can centralize each presentation. So starting with my feedback on the metaverse, thank you so much for the presentation. Nicely structured. I wanted to go a bit more into detail regarding the avatars that we were talking about, and also the different platforms. I liked it that also Decentraland and Sandbox were being mentioned, but also other metaverses, like the more traditional ones, like the World of Warcraft and Minecraft and Fortnite. Because I've written a few articles on the metaverse, and the interesting part is there's a lot of people that are talking about the AR and VR aspects of the metaverse, but of course there's like this concept or this idea that it all should be 3D virtual, but in essence, it actually all just started with a platform. And originally, the term metaverse, it's a combination of course, the Greek word meta, which means like overall, looking like an overall concept from above, while the universe is the aspect of the metaverse. And it was initially coined by Neil Stephenson in a novel, in a more science fiction-ish novel. But the whole idea, what the writer at that time had in mind, and what we've seen with those more gaming platforms, and for example, World of Warcraft, that's not very virtual, that's not 3D, but it's still a metaverse. It's the same that videos on YouTube, we still call them videos, while they are not on a videotape anymore like we used to. So I think it's good that in the presentation you mentioned the different type of metaverses, as in the different platforms that are being used. You could also do a bit more on the combine that with blockchain, with the presentation also regarding blockchain. If you combine that together, there are like two kinds of metaverses, or maybe even three kinds of metaverses. You have a centralized, more blockchain-based metaverse. You have a decentralized blockchain-based metaverse, for example, the Decentraland and Sandbox, which you referred to. And you also have a very centralized metaverse, which the group also referred to. So that's good. And that would be like the World of Warcraft, but also Grand Theft
Milo,
Auto.
Milo.
And oh, sorry.
Someone was unmuted. You can continue.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, but also platforms like Second Life, and I think it's also easier for others to understand the differences between these platforms. So I would personally always refer to the one and the other as, when it's blockchain based, when it's decentralized, that you would, for example, call it advanced, or like an advanced metaverse, while the more centralized metaverses as we know them, they're more like traditional styled. And then you can also combine them with those, for example, VR glasses, or with augmented reality, with those Oculus as we know them. So that those are different aspects which enhances the metaverse, and also gives you that enhancement that consumers are looking for. So I thought that was also an aspect that you can mention in your presentation. But of course, that does mostly have impact on the aspects of the law, of course. Like, if you have a 3D goggle, or if you have a VR goggle that you're using, combined with a decentralized platform, combined with blockchain, that gives, of course, much more legal issues than compared to just a centralized platform that you will log into on your PC. And it also imposes some security issues. I understand this is just, of course, about the law, but it's always good to mention in this respect that security and IT will also be issues that should be taken into account. But I also like that during the presentation, it was mentioned by the group that it has so much potential. And I also enjoyed the different cases that were mentioned. For example, the Hermé case. That's very nice. And definitely, I think it's good that you mentioned that it's such an essence of trade and commerce, because the metaverse itself, on one hand, it poses potential risks regarding security, but the internet as itself has the same issues. It imposes, of course, also interesting concepts regarding intellectual property, but also interesting aspects regarding how do we enter the metaverse, and how do we connect with each other, and how our platforms are being used. How do you protect children on the metaverse? How do you ensure that products that are being bought on the metaverse. For example, let's say I bought such a bag, such a digital Meta Birkin. Besides the use of course, the trademarks and the look and feel of a Hermès bag, what happens if I buy that and then I have the one and I have a very nice avatar which I'm interacting with such a bag? Yes, well, the item I bought is actually infringing Hermès rights, and it's a very interesting place that the metaverse itself, not just for gaming but also for luxury goods and the avatars and the whole hype and fashion surrounding that, it creates a lot of opportunities. But then regarding to IP, it can create also well, potential interesting discussions, because what happens if I use a platform, I'm using this bag, I really adore it, and then, well, Hermès states it's an infringement. In your presentation, you mentioned property owned in a metaverse cannot be deleted or erased. This is because ownership of property in a metaverse has the same effect as ownership in physical world. I think that is a bit of a, it really depends how you want to implement this, because if you are looking at, let's say, items that you own and they are really being stored on the blockchain, so if you're blockchain based, then yes, mostly such aspects will be the same with personal data, be stored off chain, and then you can ensure that the data can still be adjusted off chain. So then yes, you can delete, erase the link in between. But actually, if you are just using a platform, let's say a metaverse platform such as Sandbox, you actually agree with the terms and conditions online. And if I agree to the terms and conditions online, mostly you will see that in these terms of use, it's mentioned we can delete certain content if it's infringing. Certain remarks will be seen as a violation of our terms of use. For example, online harassment, online bullying, sexist remarks, etc. So in that sense, you notice that platforms have certain opportunity to moderate the content online, and they have the ability to do so. So if I buy, let's say, a Meta Birkin, and I have that in my wallet, and I'm using that for my avatar, still, if Hermès sues that platform, or actually it will most likely directly sue the maker of that product, but it can also choose to target the platform and say, oh, well, I see that there are items online that your platform via third parties are being are selling, or you're using those, delete those. Well, the platform, even without any claims, they can say, well, we've got complaints, we received claims, third party claims, we're just going to take that offline. So I understand where you're coming from, but it can indeed be deleted or erased. So yes, there is a certain type of ownership. Yes, you are purchasing the product, but you're actually not owning the product. You just having a digital copy, kind of a license to use that item. But there's always a possibility to, well, erase or delete that via the platform. So the platform can prevent you from using that. And then in the end, well, you should probably go to the maker of that item and say, I want my money back because you sold me something that is infringing on someone else's intellectual property. So in that sense, it does not completely have the same effect as ownership in the physical world. So I just wanted to point that out in relation to those cases. And I think definitely the development further of the metaverse will have some specific challenges. They will be similar to other challenges in relation to the internet and cyberspace, but of course it will be challenging how those platforms what kind of claims they will further receive, how platforms will interact with its users, how avatars will interact with its users, and how to deal with IP infringement in that regard. But that also applies, of course, to those items that are being sold, those actually digital assets that are being sold. Also, for example, because they're mostly NFTs, and we will look at the NFT presentation, of course, and discuss that later on. But those are similar issues that will that are actually being imposed. How to deal with well, infringing intellectual property, infringing NFTs and products that are being sold online, digital assets that are being sold. So that's what I wanted to mention regarding the presentation of Group 2 regarding the metaverse. So George, if you have any further input.
Thank you very much, Ms. Zida, for that enlightening on the metaverse. So I'll be calling on, before Mr. George, please, I'll be calling on Mr. David Samoye. If you are with us in the meeting, please. Thank you very much. So you can unmute yourself. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so which am I addressing, the blockchain or the metaverse, or both, or just general thoughts?
You can address the both, I think.
Okay. So first, I took down some notes, and okay, I think that was first comments when Group 1 was presenting. So I think there was a point where the presenter mentioned that the metaverse is built on Web3. So the metaverse is separate from Web3. So there are metaverses that are built on the blockchain, which is Web3, and there are also metaverses that are built on regular internet technologies. So then, aside that, then while the presenters were quite articulate and good, but something I want to mention is when presenting, try not to read the slide. So because we already have the slide, so reading it it gets boring or monotonous. So because we already have the slide, so you have the slides as a guide. The slides are supposed to guide you. So when you look at a point, and then you just go with the flow. You just flow. It's like having a conversation. It's not, you're not. This is not a classroom, because I know that one issue that our universities have is that universities try to always put you in a box and tell you there's a particular way to do things. So most times when we're doing things for school, exams, seminars, presentation, whatever, we are usually uptight and sandbox. So we just try to do it in a particular way so that we can please the lecturer and get the grades. But this is not a university. So just flow, be natural, have a conversation, just whatever comes to your head, speak on it, regards in line with the points you have, so you don't have to read the slides. Then the next point is, I think the guy that presented the blockchain, I think that was Group 7, he mentioned that BNB Smart Chain is a side chain. So BNB Smart Chain is not a side chain. In the Binance ecosystem of blockchains, Binance has like the Beacon chain. They have the smart chains. These are two main nets. These are not side chains. They also have their side chain framework where you can even build your own side chain if you want. But the BNB smart chain is not a side chain. It's an actual blockchain. I believe it's a fork of Ethereum. If you don't know what a fork is when you take an existing code base or project and then you copy it and make modifications to it, bearing the licenses that the original code or the original project has. So that's what a fork is. So yeah, then speaking on the metaverse, one very important point to note is currently we have a lot of precursors to the metaverse. So we can think of it like, for example, if you're very familiar with Discord, you'd see that Discord has what they call rooms. They have events, they have channels, they have groups, they have a lot of community kind of stuff going on in Discord. It's the same thing that I think WhatsApp is currently introducing communities and polls and different kind of features. Then Twitter has spaces and also things around it that promotes having a community. So the metaverse is basically just taking our lives, the way it is, the way we live our lives normally, and putting it into a virtual world. So, our normal social life is, for people that are religious, you go to church. For people that are students, you go to schools. For the working class, you go to your offices, and all these different groups and social gatherings and social events. So when they are taken and put into a virtual connected world, it becomes a metaverse. So there are different, for the different platforms that are building a metaverse, they have their different, their different target markets or their different goals. So Microsoft is mainly geared at building a metaverse for businesses. So I believe that Microsoft is building a product. I think in the future, Microsoft Teams is going to be extended, where you have virtual offices and different workspaces for businesses. Meta, which is Facebook, is also doing the same thing. Then you have Apple, because Apple already has like a very huge ecosystem of devices. So you have a lot of people using iPhones, a lot of people using MacBooks and iPads. And so Apple is trying to release an AR headset, which would act as like the center of their community or the world that they're trying to build. So you also have the blockchain companies that are building their own version of the metaverse. So you have Sandbox, you have Decentraland, and you have a lot of these companies building a version of the metaverse. So there was a project I was working on a few months ago. So I was actually contracted as the blockchain engineer to build the blockchain components of the metaverse. It was like it's like a game, but it can act as a game, an educational material, and it can act as a lot of things, because now you have the game world, and then inside of the game world, you can create worlds inside of it. Like if you're familiar with games like Fortnite, where you can actually create your own world where you and your friends can interact inside of the world. So during the course of that contract, we also got the company also got contracted by, I think, 2 schools in Germany that asked them to build like worlds for children where they can get to teach children inside the virtual world. And so these are all like the precursors of the metaverse. But one major ingredient or one major puzzle or piece that is missing, personally, I believe, is an interconnectivity between these different worlds. So because everyone is building a separate world at this point, so Facebook is doing their own thing, Microsoft is doing their own thing, Google perhaps is doing something else, Apple, then you have the blockchain companies. So there is a lack of connection and a lack of connection between each of these worlds. So when you have an asset, or when you have, or whatever it is that you have on Meta stays on Meta, whatever it is that you have on Apple stays on Apple, whatever it is that you have on Decentraland stays on Decentraland. But one interesting part of an ideal metaverse is interconnectivity, where the items and whatever it is that you've gathered on one form of the metaverse is transferred over to another form. And that is why the blockchain companies are pushing for like an interplanetary blockchain connection, where a lot of like you can check out the Cosmos network. I think Cosmos are really the ones pushing for that, where a lot of these blockchains that are built and that have different architectures and technology are connected together. So because usually it's easier for you to connect blockchains that are EVM based. So you have the Polygon, Avalanche, Binance, the Ethereum minutes. It's easier for you to connect these blockchains than connecting blockchains with different architectures. So talking about Polkadot, Solana, and these other blockchains that have different networks. So, but if there is a connection between every one of them, and then when you purchase an avatar or an item in one metaverse, it is transferred over to another, then it's going to be like an ideal or a true metaverse. And so let me see something else I highlighted. Okay, yeah, I think that's that for the metaverse. Then for blockchain technology, I think it escaped my mind. There was something that the presenter mentioned that escaped my mind. Yeah, so I think the suggestion that Sarah made, I think is very useful, where we get to discuss after each presentation so we don't forget points, because there was something I wanted to mention. I think I escaped it. I didn't write that on my note. But if I remember, I think I will mention it once I remember. Yeah, so that's that for
Okay,
me.
thank you very much, Mr. David. We'll be moving on to Mr. George and comments also on the topic before the final letter, which is Matthew.
All right. Can you hear me very well?
Yes.
Am I loud and clear?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
All right. Thank you, guys, and Jiipcc. Great one you guys are doing, like you always do. So, well done, guys. Everybody in the participants, they are all lawyers or to be lawyers, right?
They are not all lawyers. I think there are some health tech students, there are some food techs, and some energy industry students who like the oil and gas and patent drafting also. So they are not all.
Oh, okay. Everyone is not training to be lawyers. Okay. Interesting twist this time around. I know for the most part, some of the earlier mentors that I've had seen through the program were mostly all training to be lawyers, right? Fine. So interesting presentation talking about the metaverse. I mean, since we want to look at them individually, for metaverse, it was quite a well put presentation, looking at the people or level of group that have put this. I want to believe these are all students. Am I correct in some form? These are students, right?
No, they are not all students. I think some are professionals, some are just leaving school, some are graduates.
Okay.
Like that.
Yeah. Okay. I like that it was straight to the point for the most part. It was rich in context. It provided a lot of real world conversational issues or contextual issues. It was very clear, bold print. I have a challenge with, a lot of times when presentations are done, whereby you're almost copying a note using PowerPoint, like or maybe one or two groups did. PowerPoint is definitely not a note copying tool. So I mean, the presentations were a lot more visual. They were a lot more bold. So that is good, and they had context. I would have loved that learning expectation or what the presentation was trying to pass across was also very clear as regards to the topic beyond the general overall topic of metaverse. Like, what exactly about the metaverse are you trying to talk about, or are you trying to portray? That learning expectation is also very important, so that we can be able to really put it in context. Even though I was able to figure it out in some bit, at least for the metaverse group guys. Yeah, interesting topic. Metaverse, using digitally powered avatars to represent or recreate real world interactions, right, in the digital sphere. Pretty interesting places. But one of the things that really interests me the most when I see presentations like this is, how do we apply this to us? How does this apply to the group, to the people presenting or making the presentations? If they are lawyers, for example, how does the metaverse relate to them, right? If they are healthcare professionals, how does it relate to them, right? So putting that context of how does this relate to us, makes the conversation or makes the learning more interesting, because then it goes away from this thing that, I mean, for the most part, is up in the air, right? A lot of people don't even have a clue what we're talking about. Again, so how does it relate to, let me use lawyers as a case study, or because of largely the Jiipcc, is very much skewed towards the legal profession. So if they are lawyers, for example, right, how do they function in this space? How do legal professionals function in the metaverse? What do I make use of the metaverse for? How does it relate to my profession? What laws bind the interactions in the metaverse, and to what degree, for example, are these intertwined in the real world, right? How do we connect those interactions in the metaverse, and their legal implications in the real world, for products or for goods, property rights in the metaverse? How do we relate with property rights in the metaverse? Pretty interesting context they brought in, the Hermes and Rothschild situation, or their case. Very interesting one, along property rights, right? How do we create a physical good in real world, and how do my ownership of that property extend to the metaverse if I have not secured that IP in the metaverse, right? How do we validate that what someone is created in the metaverse is not infringing on the rights of a real world product or real world property? How do I claim that this is a digital asset that is not connected to the real world? Because in the real world, the other party, like in the situation of Hermes, didn't have, they didn't have the rights or the copyrights for that particular category, right? They had the right to the Birkins in every other category, but they didn't have that right for the category of digital art, right? So if I don't have that property right in a particular category like digital art, does it make me not have that right when somebody goes infringe on that my copyright or copyrighted property in the metaverse? So how does this relate? All right, these are some of the things that legal people in the legal professions are going to have to be dealing with in the metaverse, right? The Nike versus, I think you mentioned the Nike versus the Nike stocks issue. If I'm allowed to buy and sell Nike shoes, right, in real world, why can't I create, and sell those in the metaverse? Why would Nike tell me that I am infringing on the Nike rights because I'm selling the same shoes that I have a store that I've bought and I'm selling in the real world? And when I'm selling them in the metaverse, then I'm infringing in the rights of the copyrights of Nike, right? Pretty interesting questions or conversation. Creating illegal securities, like in the data lab situation, right? How do you create investment products that are not actually registered, because when you put out things for people to buy and invest, in the real world, you have to, make it legal. You have to register it with the regulatory authorities, the Security Exchange Commission, right? So, but if you put out that in the metaverse, for example, and put out an investment asset, what is the regulatory framework for that investment asset? That is the situation with Data Labs, right? So, real legal questions that the guys, for example, in the legal profession will have to help us deal with in the metaverse, right? So how do you make your knowledge about the metaverse one that people know you as, quote and unquote, a metaverse lawyer? If you're if the guys in the profession of health, how do you leverage the metaverse? Is there a potential, for example, to administer drugs or administer medications in the metaverse for real world that has real world effect and real individual, right? Can I buy prescription drugs in the metaverse, right? And be able to receive those prescription drugs in real life, in a physical store or a pharmacy or in a hospital? Can my avatar go to a hospital in the metaverse and I'm able to meet a doctor that is able to examine me and I communicate with the doctor exactly how I'm feeling in real world while we are at the metaverse, and is able to provide prescription for me that I go in the real world to actually go acquire. So it is very critical that, and that is what I mostly like to look out for, beyond the whole, academic side of these things, right? How do we relate it to, real world experiences, and how do we bring the context, right, to the people in the group or in the cohorts, for these guys? How does it make meaning, to them? If you're also in the legal profession, for example, cases of abuse, I think someone mentioned, Sarah mentioned something along that line, cases of abuse, that is in the metaverse. How do you relate it to real world? So if I assault your avatar in metaverse, does it mean that I get charged in the real world for assault, right? If you're a lady, for example, and for whatever it is, you create a very, sexy, quote unquote, avatar, and then harassment happens in the metaverse, can you charge the person behind that avatar for harassment in the real world if the person, for example, have never even met you or put an eye or put a face to you? And just because my avatar interacted with yours in the metaverse, can you take me to court in the real world for harassment? So these are very interesting conversations, that, are still not very clear in the application of the metaverse. And for some of us here in the group, how we begin to position ourselves in driving knowledge and understanding of these things puts you in a place where people begin to know you as the go-to person, to get clarity for these things. If you begin to invest yourself into, being knowledgeable, if you decide that, look, I'm going to, if I'm in the legal profession, I am going to, be, a top legal metaverse lawyer, for example. I'm going to be a top health tech lawyer, a health professional in the metaverse, for example. This is the period where you begin to insert yourself in that space and then begin to create become a trusted authority by putting out content around there, deepening your knowledge around there. So for the presentation, I like to see where it is contextualized beyond the academic side of, telling us, yes, this is what it is, and this is what metaverse is and all that. Relate it to yourself, your team, relate it to you guys, and relate it to what you want to do with yourselves in the metaverse, which, they were able to at least bring out those conversations, right? Please citing those examples of those cases, even though they didn't really now put it in context, to what they want to do. So for the metaverse group, good presentation, or beyond presentation, let's start looking at how this makes any meaning or any sense to us. Let's start looking at how, we begin to drive our understanding and knowledge towards putting great context, in our various fields. And if we choose to take that area of specialty, right? Because the truth is the tech space is huge. Blockchain, metaverse, NFTs, everything we're going to discuss here today are totally, they have things that interconnect with themselves, but on their own, they're also very huge subsectors of that Web3 whole spectrum. So if you choose to really, deepen in that metaverse side, you can become a specialist in that place and become the go-to person driving conversations or driving directions in whatever field you choose. And I also like to see that, when you're making presentations. Yeah, thank you. I just try to keep this brief.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. George. We enjoyed your comments and your enlightenment. So I'll be calling on Mr. Matthew SIC. He'll be taking us on the data protection aspect and the privacy aspect of the metaverse.
Hi everyone. Hi Hussein. Hello to all the mentees and mentors. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Yes, we can hear you.
I just want to confirm from Juliana and Hussein. Is it okay, because I'm looking at the clock now, and I'm just wondering if I can give my comments on all the presentations in summary and focus on the data protection context of the last question. Simply because I don't know if we'll be able to do many more rounds. Is that fine?
Yes, you can give all your comments. I think we just have a few more comments than the question and answer session before the closing.
Brilliant. Okay, so the first group, I think your question was, is there any particular law guiding NFTs? What are NFT rights? And NFTs, what categories of intellectual property do NFTs sit under? So Grace, I thought that was a really good presentation. No, I'm wrong actually. That was a really good presentation. I really liked the way you put everything in the context of the Nigerian legal regime. And those would be my very, very light touch thoughts on that. The next group would be the group that talks about the metaverse and meta backings. I thought that was a really, really good presentation as well. Actually, I think they were the ones who kind of were closest to the mark. Talking specifically about the presentation itself, I feel as though in the beginning, they probably focused a lot more on giving us definitions and a background. Whereas the question that I have here says, how can IPRs be protected in the metaverse? And what are your thoughts on the meta backings case? And so what I thought they might do is to look at the metaverse and look at the different categories of intellectual property rights, and then explain how those are represented within the metaverse, maybe as compared to the real world. But the meta backings case, of course, is significant. We probably have the same, and George has talked about it. It's kind of the same application of third-party intellectual property rights. We have precedents in that sense. The Doc Martens case, cases of, designers sending cease and desist letters to platforms like eBay, because eBay now cannot sell designer products and they want their products associated in certain capacities. And I think it's very right. The same intellectual property considerations transfer onto the metaverse platform. I think that it's a very difficult situation because it would actually make the metaverse not very fun and not very useful. We know platform providers like Fortnite and Facebook have said, they want those spaces which are now sort of video games to become places where people hang out, where people have meetings. And so I know that they're already talking to people who design those virtual worlds to integrate different branding. And so one day you go into your metaverse environment and it's branded Man City. The next day it's branded Los Angeles Lakers. So what kind of limitations would exist if somebody decides to modify their skin or their virtual avatar within that environment to show maybe a competing team like the New York Knicks? I'm just giving a sports example, but you see, can the platform provider sue Facebook or Fortnite to say we only wanted advertising for such and such purposes? So it presents a very interesting challenge. In particular, the meta backings case, it's a very good point. Do the trademark rights, which we know do not necessarily need to be registered, they attach by notoriety? Do they attach including into the metaverse? It's a good question, and maybe you could have discussed it in that sense. I can't remember the young lady's name, but I think it was Ewa Hubari. Ehubare. Alex, I think it was a gentleman who talked about blockchain. Again, my comments would be, you spent quite a bit of time on definitions. types of blockchains. And while it was really good to set that context, I think Hussein had to be very tough with you. I said, "Can you end the presentation immediately?" Because you overrun. So you kind of missed the question. The question in that sense was, what are the disadvantages of blockchain, most especially as it concerns the financial sector? So my input on that would probably be three things that you could have touched on in terms of disadvantages. I mean, we know there's lots of advantages in the space of smart contracts, etc. For starters, from a privacy and data protection perspective, which is my area of expertise, we know that a ledger can attach anywhere in the world, and the ledger contains quite a lot of personal information, as to what it attaches, because it's supposed to be a record in and of itself. It cannot be removed and it cannot be deleted. So fundamental things like right to be forgotten, right to object to processing, right to restrict processing. So depending on whether it's an open or a closed blockchain, those can present some significant challenges, let's say, if it was used where sensitive data is an issue. We know we have challenges when we talk about cryptocurrencies and coin issuings, the regulation. Financial regulators are having a really hard time taxing, capturing transactions, and so there's a lot of disadvantages for governments in terms of regulating rogue players. We already know that now FTX, the news is everywhere, and that would have been a really good example to bring out, and it would have been really relevant. In fact, could have picked up so many examples specific to blockchain. The last thing would be, say, maybe another disadvantage is that it's now becoming very common that coins, which are an offshoot of blockchain technology, are being used for fraud and terrorism and human trafficking. So it's almost the flip side of what companies, let's say like IBM, are doing with coffee and smart contracts. The flip side is that now it's very easy to commit fraud through the use of cryptocurrencies and even stable coins. And that's a really, really big enforcement challenge. But all in all, I mean, not an easy topic, really. So hats off to you guys. The last feedback I have, of course, in relation to data protection, which would be the maximum punishment for medical practitioner who fails to abide by the data protection law. That's a very interesting question. Specifically because it doesn't have much context. And I guess probably that was the way you guys framed the question, to promote a healthy discourse. I would say it would depend. It would depend, one, on the type of personal data that we're talking about. There are distinctions, and it would depend on the territorial and material scope that applies. In short, maybe the jurisdiction in which that inappropriate use of personal information has happened. So I'll give you an example. For instance, in the US, there are different laws. There's a high-tech, there's HIPAA. HIPAA is specifically about the personal data relating to the health condition, and high-tech is about financial payments that are made using credit card transactions on health services, so insurers and so on and so forth. Right, and those have different penalties. Those have different reporting obligations. In Nigeria, there's specifically the National Data Protection Regulation, which we all know, and the National Health Act, which you mentioned, has different sort of consequences. Now, in terms of territorial and material scope, we know that acts like the GDPR, the UK GDPR, as well as the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation and all the other privacy laws in the world, have an extraterritorial scope. So let's say this medical practitioner happens to be based in Nigeria, and they happen to be treating a EU resident, perhaps, right? So maybe this person is being insured by a US insurer, or they're domiciled in the US, and they happen to be a member of the EU. And so you have an interplay of different data protection regimes. So to the last group, what I would have expected or what would make your work easier is to work backwards, right? You ended up spending, I think, maybe 1 minute on the last slide. On the last slide, you talked about the different things that could happen. So I would have split it in the following way. One, criminal punishment, criminal penalties that could have incurred. You mentioned your lawsuits that could include injunctions, that could include class action suits, because all these legislations allow for data subjects to sue for personal damages, right? And to sue together and as a collective. There would be criminal, possibly punishments, depending on the nature in which this information was shared, whether it was malicious, whether it was fraudulent. You know, you could find somebody might have done it in bad faith. The anecdotes that you gave in terms of how we know people can find it's a small, let's say, city or town, and someone knows a relative of somebody who has a very sensitive disease. Those kind of things are fun, but would have been really good to see where the actual sting would happen and say what the kind of penalties would happen. There might be some criminal. Of course, we know that also in some countries, I think it's still in Nigeria, it was recently repealed in Kenya, you have criminal defamation, right? Where somebody defames you, says, I saw so-and-so going into a hospital, the doctor said he was treated for this and that, and it's a criminal defamation case. We have, of course, the biggest one here, which would be administrative punishment. Okay, again, in the context of Nigeria, in Nigeria, this would probably be a fine under the NDPR. You would probably be seeing your 1 to 2% of turnover for the business, which is the maximum penalty. If the GDPR attaches, for instance, you'd be seeing your 2 to 4% fine turnover on annual revenue. You'll probably be looking at disbarment from the specific medical practitioner board or suspension of a license, right? And those are all risks that would probably happen if personal data was not handled in the appropriate manner. Indeed, there's a National Health Act which talks about the measures. I think it's section 26, which probably talks about the security measures that health service providers must take in regards to personal data, and of course, sensitive personal data, right? Because we could be talking financial data, could be talking sensitive data relating to the particular condition and treatment. We could be talking about general personal data, and all of those would be looked at in context. And then, of course, you very rightly mentioned the last one, which would be reputational damage. Of course, there's the punishment that could happen on social media and you end up getting cancelled. So that could have been a really fun anecdote. I think for me, that's what I'll say, a really good, really tough topics, really. Well done to all the presenters. One thing I will do before I close my comments is I should have updated my bio at the very beginning. I've since left DHL supply chain. I now work within PwC UK's specialist legal services team as a manager in data protection. So with that, I give back the floor to the host. Thank you, Hussein.
Congratulations, Mr. Matthew Saisi, on your new job. Thank you very much. We'll take note of that when you come into mentors on our next session. Quickly, before we move to the question and answer, and also the final comments from our mentors, we'll quickly take a picture time. I encourage everybody to put on their videos. Who want to take pictures, a snapshot of the screen. We'll post on our Instagram, our WhatsApp, and LinkedIn, commenting on what we've learned from today's session and tagging our mentors and Jiipcc. So please put on your video for just a minute. Let me quickly take a screenshot. Thank you very much as you do so.
Are we supposed to smile or to keep squeezing?
No, you have to smile, please. Yeah, please smile. Okay, I think I got one. Please kindly hold on, keep smiling, please keep smiling. Please. Okay. Quickly. Is this thing not working? Okay, thank you very much. So we're moving on to the question and answer session now. So I'll be reading the questions to our mentors for today. So the first question is for Miss Sarah Zaide. So how can IPR be protected in the metaverse? That's the question. Miss Sarah.
Oh, sorry. How can what in the metaverse?
IPR.
Oh, how can intellectual property rights be protected in the metaverse? Well, it really depends. I would say on one hand, the same laws apply in the metaverse as do in the real world. Let's say so. At least it should be. The only problem is enforcement. So let's say if you have a whole bunch of goods that are being imported, you can of course say, oh, these goods are infringing other people's intellectual property rights, for example, because they're counterfeit goods. We will hold them at the customs and they will not be imported. And for example, these will be destroyed. But on the internet, that is a lot more difficult. So regarding the metaverse, it will apply the same rules and the same, well, let's say the same rules as in real life, but also the same issues regarding the internet. The most easiest is actually still to address the person that infringes directly on your intellectual property right, but on the other hand, also contact the platforms where those items, those digital assets are being used. And it would be mostly then the platforms to ensure that they, for example, have notice and take down procedures. Those are procedures in which they receive claims and then, for example, within 24 hours, 36, 48 hours, they will review those claims and then take it offline, but also give a notice that you are infringing, or with you, I mean the person who is infringing the intellectual property rights, that person is infringing on someone's intellectual property rights and claims have been received. I think that would be the most easiest, or let's say the most standard ways to ensure that intellectual property rights are being respected. But yeah, that mostly applies to how to act if there is an infringement. It is quite difficult to prevent intellectual property rights infringements of happening, because especially with popular culture, we've seen it with Hermès, we've seen it with other brands like Nike, Gucci, Versace. If you have international brands that are having a certain popularity, there's always an opportunity for other people to further use that and in some way earn money of that and misuse other people's intellectual property. But that can also be intellectual property of, for example, young artists or musicians. Like if you're using music from musicians without any rights or licenses in that respect. So I think especially we will be looking at platforms to ensure that intellectual property rights are respected, and also that the laws of the country where those platforms are located will probably apply. We will also see that, for example, certain accounts can be blocked, content moderation. I think you will be looking in that respect to those options. But I think we will definitely see more intellectual property right infringements happening. It's just an opportunity for platforms to ensure that it's being limited and brought to the attention of their users. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Saisi. Ms. Susan, sorry. I'll be calling on Mr. David if he has any comment on her answers.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so as regards copyright and intellectual property infringement, anything that has to do with law and the internet, there are lots of gray areas. So it's not as straightforward as, for example, one common meme or something that people used to make fun a lot when it comes to NFTs is that for an NFT that is being sold for $1.3 million or 200K, you could easily just download the image and you have exactly the same image. So at that point, who is the owner of the image? Is it the person that purchased the image or the person that downloads it? And can the person that bought the image sue someone that downloaded it? So a lot of these gray areas comes up when it comes to the internet and copyright. So it's not like a straightforward case. It's not as straightforward as it is with real properties or real life assets. And so that is why NFTs are. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, so like I was saying, so NFTs are supposed to be a proof of ownership, sort of like a certification for a real life asset. So NFTs are not supposed to be like the more common ones that we know, like those board ape images, and those are not the goal of NFTs. The goal is for it to be like a token or a proof, a certification, just like when you purchase a land and you're given proof of ownership or certificate of ownership. That is what an NFT is. And so that is what an NFT is supposed to represent. Then there was a question that someone asked in the comment that I was really interested in. If I can address that question. Is that okay, Hussein?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think it was Ife Olua. So he asked if the metaverse, what does the metaverse really seek to achieve? Taking into consideration world problems and real life issues. Okay. The metaverse basically is not trying to solve world hunger or security problems or any of these real world problems. That is not the goal of the metaverse. So the goal of the metaverse is more or less like social media Pro Max. So like an advanced, just like we have this kind of interconnectivity with social media that we've never had before, where we're on this call now and we're in different, some of us are even outside the country, some of us are in different states in Nigeria. So the metaverse aims to take this level of communication beyond what it currently is. And so with things like live events, we're having avatars tracking our movements and things like so. It's just like an advanced form of communication. All the goal, all the intention of what every single metaverse that is being built is more or less like an advancement of human communication beyond physical barrier, so and time limits. So it's not trying to solve world hunger or security problems or world poverty problems. So that is not the goal of the metaverse. Yeah. Then one last one before I drop off. Yeah, disadvantages of the blockchain, most especially as it concerns the financial sector. So there've been a lot of buzz around the FTX crash. And as a blockchain dev, one of the things that what's the word? One of the things I'm really concerned about is the way blockchain companies or the blockchain space is structured, or the blockchain industry generally is structured. Now, those exchanges, Binance, FTX, Huobi, and the likes of them, they are not a representation of the blockchain. So this is really important because a lot of people who are not actively in the space always take those exchanges as the frontiers of blockchain technology, but those exchanges are not blockchain technology. So FTX, Binance, and what have you, they are mainly they mainly just provide like a platform for you to trade tokens, but they are not built on blockchain technology. Then regarding that question, it is one of the main problems, or one of the main flaws of the blockchain has to do with the fact that it is decentralized and anonymous. And so while that is a double-edged sword, because while that is one of the strengths of the blockchain, it is also one of the weaknesses. It is a strength in the sense that it allows a lot of people raise funds for their businesses. Now, it is way easier for you to pitch to someone that I'm building a business, this is my token, and I believe that this business is going to do very well, and so my token is going to grow, than for you to pitch to someone to just donate to your business or to whatever it is, or to your startup. And so with blockchain technology, a lot of companies have been able to raise funds very easily. So you have games that have not yet been built, but they've started trading their tokens already. They've started raising a lot of funds. You have a lot of projects like that. So I've even been part of projects that the product has not yet been pushed to the market, but yet the token has already raised a lot, or is already doing very well in the market. Now, why that is good for bringing in funds to blockchain companies, it also poses a problem. Firstly, the problem of fraud. So a lot of people over time have created a lot of scam projects that they do an ICO, an IDO, an initial DEX offering or initial coin offering, and then they raise a lot of money and disappear into thin air. And so that was why the United States SEC actually stopped Americans from investing in ICOs and IDOs, so to prevent problems like that. Because prior to 2017, there were a whole lot of scam projects that were rising up. And still, these projects still come up, especially during bull runs. And so this is the double-edged problem with the blockchain. Another is anonymity. And so if you are to use a blockchain, a DeFi now, to transact, especially when you're comfortable with blockchain technology, or you're familiar with how it works, it is very easy for you to get started. So all it takes is for you to connect your MetaMask wallet or whatever wallet it is, then connect to the right network, and you're done. You can start trading and doing whatever it is. But if you were to interact with a proper or a regular service, like let's say Binance, for example, or a regular fintech, you see that you do a lot more in KYC. So you have to either submit your passports, it takes them time to review, and then these processes. So while the blockchain simplifies this process to make it easy for people to onboard, it also poses a problem of tracking transactions and also regulating these transactions. For example, like there's a product I'm currently building. So I currently work with Cancer Finance as the lead blockchain architect. So there's the flagship product that we're building, that I'm the lead smart contract engineer. So we had to put a lot of checks and balances to the smart contract. Checks and balances in the sense that if you were to just write the contract the way a lot of projects do it, it leads to when the product is too decentralized, it leads to people taking so much advantage of the product. And so there have to be some form of centralization or control at the center that could regulate the kind of withdrawals, large withdrawals, and that could regulate some kind of admin functionalities. And so these balance have to exist in blockchain financial services, or blockchain financial services. So there have to be like some form of decentralization and ease of access. And also there have to be some form of control to mitigate bad actors. Because one very important thing I've learned in all my years of writing code is that you can never trust humans to act right. So that is the first thing that you have in mind. So you always have to do things with the mind that people will always try to exploit it, or will always try to take advantage of the protocol. And so this is the same. It's actually called the blockchain trilemma. So where you try to balance all the aspects of the blockchain, taking the advantages and the disadvantages. Because while every aspect of the blockchain that is actually good or an advantage exists, those same things act as disadvantages given the scenario.
Okay, Thank you very much, David. Okay, I'll be calling on Mr. George. Okay, I think I have a question for Mr. George Onyewuchi. So the question is, what are the disadvantages of blockchain, most especially as it concerns in the financial sector? And that's the question.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, thanks again for the question. I'm very insightful, pretty much insightful comments by all the mentors in the house. Blockchain, when you're looking at it overall, pretty very interesting conversation and technology. Disadvantage of blockchain when it comes to finance, it's an interesting question because, you know, there's one of the mistakes people do a lot of time is that when they think about blockchain, a lot of times they just think about cryptocurrencies, right? And coins and tokens. Once they just think about finance and blockchain. But beyond coins and cryptocurrencies, right? Blockchain still plays the underlying technology still plays a major role, when it comes to finance. The only, what I consider as not necessarily a disadvantage, but what I consider a challenge with blockchain when it comes to finance is about compliance, right? Blockchain presents one of the biggest headache, one of the biggest challenge finance has to deal with when it comes to blockchain is how to manage the part on compliance, because there's an aspect of blockchain, that we call decentralized finance, right? Powered by the blockchain. And blockchain enables you to be able to carry out financial transactions without an intermediary. Now, with all the wonderful things that that brings about, it also brings about the big challenges where the kinds of financial transactions that you and I wouldn't want to be happening can actually happen in the blockchain, and nobody can either stop it, spot it, or control it, right? Today we're having, huge insecurity issue in the country. Everybody is saying everybody is wondering or trying to ask one simple question: how are these guys being funded? How is Boko Haram, for example, getting funds that we cannot track? How are they buying weapons, right? How are the bandits? How are they financing, all the weapons that they are using to cause terror, right? While there might be ways they are moving transactions in cash, while there have been ways whereby they are moving transactions, collusion with financial players, a good degree of these transactions are also happening in the blockchain, via decentralized finance, via, transactions where there are no governments, there are no agencies, that have control over what is going on. So transparency and all the beautiful things that we can achieve with the blockchain is fine, but the bigger challenges or the bigger challenge that we have is the fact that when there's no intermediary and where there's no way to track transactions, you can potentially leave room for the most undesirable types of financial transactions to occur. So that entire disadvantage of not having eyesight or foresight on what is going on can breed, quote unquote, what some people call the dark web, can breed, things happening in the dark web, where sorts of illegal transactions are happening, whether it's drugs, whether it's guns or weapons that are being traded, whether it's chemicals that are being traded, whether it's even information. A lot of hacks happening here and there. When people hack information from top side, those informations that are being hacked are traded, and they can be traded, using the blockchain, because you can be traded without you being able to track the people conducting that transaction. So it's a big enabler, for huge criminal activities, because of the same thing that brings its advantage. The same advantage it has, and why we love it so much, is also the same dilemma that we have to deal with, because people can put it to other use. That is the biggest issue when it comes to the blockchain and financial transaction when you're speaking of disadvantages. And just very quickly to touch on what someone talked about with the FTS issue and all that, right? What happens with FTX also gives you a little bit of what can go wrong, right, when there's no regulatory oversight. And a lot of things have happened, with other guys that are not as popular because of the sums involved, they're not as much. These things are happening every other time. FTS became a huge news because of the nature of the person involved in it, because of how much the company was worth just about a few months ago and how it crashed. And the very reality that we now came to find out is because it has been that there had been no oversight, in that company, and all his activity it's been running, right, has had completely little oversight. And guess what? Just the shocking part is FTS is actually one of the most transparent that we have. So imagine if one of the most transparent blockchain companies that we have in the world, that was actually the poster boy for transparency in the blockchain, has come to it does not be discovered how empty and how unsavory all the things that we're able to do because of the level of compliance that they were not able to enforce on them, right? Imagine what the other companies that are doing core or hardcore blockchain enabled transactions, core P2P, core DeFi, right? Decentralized finance. Imagine what might be happening there if the guys that were the poster boy of transparency, the guys that were supposed to be like, the shining lights of an industry like this, ended up to be this shallow, ended up to be this way. Just imagine what is going on in some of the companies that are even notorious, for the kind of things that happen, there. So that is just the problem, or that's just the challenge, we have to face when it comes to blockchain and finance. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for answering that question so wonderfully. I'll be asking Mr. Matthew to also comment on that question if he has any comment on it.
Sorry, Hussein, which question?
The question, what are the disadvantages of blockchain, most especially as it concerns in the financial sector?
No, not any new comments except the ones I've given. Essentially, regulatory issues, data protection issues, and propensity to facilitate fraud. I think that would be my comment.
I still have a question for you. What are the maximum punishments for the medical practitioners who fail to abide by the data protection law? I think, that question is for you.
Civil penalties, administrative penalties like fines and suspension, and criminal penalties, and then of course reputational damage. So those 4 areas would be my
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Matthew. So I'll call on Ms. Sarah to give us her final comments and also the other mentors.
Thank you. I don't have any final comments. I do want to thank everyone for their presentations. It was very insightful. Really enjoyed it. And I would say keep up the good work. And also, indeed, depending on, of course, the topics, it's always good to have also comments regarding the presentation style. And those were already discussed by the other mentors. So keep that also in mind when presenting. And I hope to see you all and speak to you all in the future.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. George, I don't know if you have any final comments.
And just to give you guys a thumbs up for what you're doing, creating this enlightenment, creating this level of deepening the knowledge in these non-traditional areas of technology, pretty much useful at this time. And for the mentees, I want to believe that the process have been very educating and very rewarding for them. Just to tell them that beyond the knowledge, knowledge really has no value if you don't put it to use, if you don't put it to action. So beyond the knowledge, they should take this as a learning board. They should take this as what opens up their curiosity or their consciousness to this space, and now go further to deepen their knowledge and application of what they've learned. They should become good ambassadors of Jiipcc, and the only way they can become good ambassadors of Jiipcc is by going to implement or going to put to use the knowledge that they've acquired. So we're looking out for them, rooting for them, and anytime that they need further support, I'm sure if they reach out to any of the mentors here, I'm sure definitely we'll be very willing to provide whatever form of support that we can to support them. So great work you guys are doing, and all the best to the mentors into taking this further to practical use. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm calling on Mr. David also. If you have any final words, final comments for our mentees. Mr. David, are you still with us?
Okay, so like the other mentors have said, so just take into consideration everything that's been raised here. So that involves presentation styles, practical application, get into the space. Like there is a whole lot of opportunities for everyone in the blockchain space. So for lawyers, IP lawyers, engineers, content creators, whatever it is that you prefer or want to get into. So there's a whole lot of opportunities, and it's a very exciting space. So there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of highs and lows. So you're going to have a really, really exciting time being in the blockchain space. So just enjoy yourself, go with the flow, just have fun basically. Yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you very much. And then finally, I'll be calling on Mr. Matthew. If he has any final comments also.
No comments, just echo. Thank you very much, everyone. Good job, guys, on your hosting. Good job, Hussein. Yeah, I think it's a really good thing. It makes me feel really good about the future of this continent when I see us here doing this good work. So I'll see you guys next time.
Okay, thank you very much. Finally, before I hand over to Ms. Juliana to give us her final comments for the day and closing remark, I'll quickly remind all our mentees that are with us in the meeting that we just finished the week 7 and we are entering the week 8 by next week. We've been announcing that they should be preparing for their week 8 project since the first week. So please, I'm still making the final announcements. We'll be taking your projects by next week. So please, if you have started, if you've not started, if you're about to start, if you're at the planning level, please make sure you do something about it by the weekend. And finally, I think Ms. Sarah dropped a link on the chat box. I don't know what the link was for. I don't know if she can just tell us something about it.
Yes. So it's actually because we were talking about the NFTs, and this is actually a link regarding a court case regarding NFTs and the use of trademarks and Juventus, so the Italian football league. So that's an interesting court case which you can read all the details of in the link.
Okay, thank you very much. So finally, I'll call on Ms. Juliana to give us a closing remark. And I do hope we all have a fun-filled weekend.
Yeah, so, sorry, if you don't mind me just chipping in something. Yeah, just to say that I think the link she dropped also just made me remember that because I also do quite a bit of sessions on the blockchains and how it applies to various sectors. And one coming up for the fashion industry this month on the 23rd. I'm sure that we'll also share the link with Miss Juliana, who also shared to our network. She's going to be part of that too. She's usually part of those sessions. So we are looking at the fashion industry, and we won't be having someone like the creative director for our brand. Some of the big blockchain companies, their creative directors, people that manage the fashion space for them, are going to be part of that session. So guys, just look forward to it and also join so you can learn how some of these things are happening or being applied in the real world, right? So just thought I mentioned that. You can check at Creep Africa. I think I shared that link on the chat, either on LinkedIn or on Twitter for more. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. You are such a busy man. However, you still create the time to be with us. We are so grateful. Thank you, Sarah. It's such a pleasure to see you again. Thank you for coming. We're so grateful and we've learned a lot from your wealth of experience. Thank you, Mr. Sesi, Matt. It's so good to see you. And I remember the last time you came and the advice that you gave. I think that a lot of the mentees have to still go back to listen to the YouTube sessions to still learn and relearn. And to David is like our regular mentor. He comes and he pours his heart out to ensure that the next generation is well prepared for the future of tech. Thank you so much, David. And for Hussein, thank you for moderating the session. We're so grateful. And to all the mentees, thank you for researching. Thank you for presenting. Thank you for working together. Thank you for cooperating. We are almost done. We just have 2 more weeks and we'll be rounding up for the session for the quarter. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have an amazing weekend. Please take care of yourselves and rest well. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.